What's up, you guys? We recently finished a junkyard axle swap on my 2015 Jeep Wrangler JKU here, and I haven't really had a chance to talk about all the parts and everything we've used on it, so that's what this video will be. If you're interested in seeing how we got this Dana 60 and 14 bolt on my Jeep here without the use of truss kits, then just keep on watching. A big reason I chose the Dana 60 and 14 bolt is that there is so much aftermarket support for these axles for the Jeep Wranglers, and also they use parts from regular vehicles that are on the road. So if I were to ever break something while wheeling, chances are I can go to the local parts store and pick up the parts I need to put my Jeep back together and not ruin a whole wheeling trip. I specifically chose the 05 and up Dana 60 as opposed to the earlier years because the 05 and ups have 35 spline and they put a lot better bearings and components in it. It's just a much stronger axle. So this here is my Dana 60. Now keep in mind, I only have one wheeling trip on these axles so far, so there probably will be a lot of changes in the future, but this is where we're at right now, and my one wheeling trip was successful. I have an aux locker and Yukon 538 gears. We still need to wire up my front locker. We still have the drive-away lock in it right now. So for steering, Nick welded these Artec high steer knuckles onto my knuckles. And as you can see here, it required a bit of modification from us in order to make the drag link mounted at the correct point and also to have my tie rod clear my diff cover at full turn. I already had the PSC Big Bore Kit Hydro Assist on my Jeep. The only change we had to make to that to work with my new Dana 60 is I had to get an 8-inch ram. We definitely started making a skid for my PSC ram here, and then I hit it before we actually finished it, so that's nice. But as you can see, my ram sits lower on the axle than pretty much anything else, so we want to protect that, of course. We custom built my drag link and my track bar using DOM and some Heim joints from Barnes. And then I have an aluminum tie rod that I got from Artec. You can't see it here, but I have a custom Yeller Fab axle side track bar mount. And then on the frame side, I have a TMR Customs mount for the track bar. And then I did the Nick Barna's ball joint eliminators. By the way, everyone who told me ball joint eliminators weren't going to drive good down the road was wrong. And then I got these locked off-road bump stops that we obviously haven't finished setting up yet. So I don't have any info to share on those yet, but hopefully I'll have good things to say soon. And yes, surprise, surprise, I'm still on shocks and coils, which was not a part of the build plan for my Jeep, but a lot of decisions led me here. I actually had a set of ORIs on order for a while that I was going to put in the front here, and then I ended up making the decision to cancel those. So right now I'm just running my 2.5-inch AEV shocks and coils from my old lift. I can go into that more if you guys are interested. Just let me know in the comments. Now climbing under my Jeep, I have my Adams 1350 drive shafts. These were the drive shafts I had with my stock axles before, and the rear length worked, but I did have to send the front one back to Adams to get shortened just a bit. I was also somewhat able to reuse my Hepta manufacturing long arm kit, but because we changed the placement of the control arms on the axle, we had to adjust the lengths of the control arms. Here's a view of those Hepta long arm brackets from the inside of the frame rail. I did stick with a 4-link front. We were able to make that work. And we did use modified versions of Artec brackets for all of the controller mounts on my axle. Now, lots of people ask me why we wouldn't have just used truss kits because they make it a lot easier, and they do. But truss kits would have had the lower control arm mounts and the lower shock mounts sitting well below the axle tube, which makes for really poor clearance. We spent a lot of time on mine figuring out how we can make everything very high clearance, which is going to be so awesome because I used to get hung up on things all the time, and now I barely have anything sitting below the axle tube. Now we are coming back to the rear. So first off, in order to keep my shocks mounted higher and not sitting below the rear axle tube, we made shock hoops that go on my wheel wells here. And again, you'll see nothing hangs down low on this axle. The diff itself is the lowest hanging point, and we did shave it with the crane cover. This here is my 02 Chevy 14 bolt that we shaved into a 13 bolt. I have 538 gears in this as well and a spool. I was able to reuse my Yeti Steer Smarts track bar on this, and then we actually put a sway bar on the rear. We reused the JK one, and then Nick made these end links here. My axle side track bar mounts and my lower control arm mounts were from Artec, and then Nick made this bridge that goes over the diff for my third control arm mount. While I was able to reuse my Hepta long arm kit for the lower control arms, we did end up going to a 3rd link on the upper. Now if you're wondering how I have a spool in the rear on an automatic 2015 JK, I'll let you know how I tricked the ECU. Late year JKs only require 3 of the 4 wheel speed sensors to be reading at all times in order to stay out of limp mode, so I unplugged one of the rears. That way when I'm turning in corners, the Jeep can't tell that my 2 rear wheels are going the same speed throughout the turn. A lot of people told me that wasn't going to work. I tried it anyways. It works just fine. And I do have 60 tone rings all the way around, so when I programmed my gear ratio and tire size using JScan, I had to times everything by 52/60 in order to get the correct numbers that I needed to input. I do have 17-inch trail readies on here currently, and I still do have the Ford lockouts for the time being. However, I did get drive slugs, so as soon as we actually wire in my aux locker, instead of just having the drive-away lock in it permanently, I should be able to use a drive slug, and then I can just lock and unlock my locker instead of locking and unlocking my hubs. There's obviously some work still to be done on my Jeep. For one, I need to put my inner fenders back in. And another one is that I'm going to need some new tires in the near future here. These were just some 40s we had in the basement, so we're using them for the time being, but I am hoping to go to a set of 42s soon. I did gear for 42s after all. And I think that kind of sums up everything. This was a quick overview, so if you have any questions about anything in specific, either leave me a comment or you can visit me on Instagram at yellerlife and send me a DM. I hope you will subscribe to my channel for any future videos about my Jeep, and thank you so much for watching.